Greetings from the United States Capitol. It's great to be with you tonight and welcome you to the Quad Cities and Illinois' 17th Congressional District. What we are doing here today on a Saturday is really an example of what works here in Congress. We are pledging our support for democracies all around the world, just as some would see our own democracy falter. An important part of how democracy works is our press. Without an accurate detail and communication of what's important, our citizens would be led away from the truth. So my thanks to all of you for the important work that you do to support our American democracy. And I want to thank Maggie Radicke for a wonderful introduction. Maggie is one of only 4 news directors that I had in my 22 years in broadcasting. She was the one who offered me the job to move back home to Rockford, Illinois, after working 5 years in Texas. And it was the first job I would have in the congressional district that I now serve. Maggie was also instrumental in teaching me what it meant to become a leader. So at the time, our TV station's moniker was Rockford's News Leader. But to really understand what it meant, she believed that we all had to believe in it. And so I remember one of the times where we had one of our pizza parties, where we had everybody from the news team in one room, and we had a specific pep talk from Maggie. And she asked all of us on the news team of WREX, what does it mean to be a leader? And I think we all mulled over what we had that thought in our head, how to answer that question. And then she gave us a clue. She said, you all are leaders. And it's something that I have taken with me through the latter years of my career in broadcasting and now to the United States Congress. Because here was the thing that I learned on that day. Being a leader, it doesn't matter what your title is. It doesn't matter if you are the boss to someone else. So long as you're helping use your talents to help the betterment of the entire group. And so for me, it meant that, if you were a one-man band or if you're a producer or even an intern, that every one of us has a leadership role in making sure that people have the information that they need. So for me, in the case of local news, it's when people start their day and when they finish it, they get the information that is important to them. And now in Congress, it's making sure that the people back home have the accurate depiction of what's going on right here in Washington, D.C. So thank you, Maggie, for teaching not just me, but all of us some of the life lessons that, for me, have served me so well in this current job. I am so incredibly grateful to the Illinois News Broadcasters Association for being in Rock Island, but also allowing me to appear virtually and share with you my thoughts on Congress, our nation's politics, and the state of news media today. For me, it was more than 20 years. I served as a broadcast meteorologist, working to keep people safe ahead of big storms, severe weather, tracking hurricanes and tornadoes and the like. After receiving my Bachelor of Science degree at Northern Illinois University, I started my career working at KTRE in Lufkin, Texas. I was the chief meteorologist there before I moved up to Tyler, Texas at KLTV, where I was the morning meteorologist, but I was on both KLTV and KTRE at the same time. The role of a meteorologist is to recognize parts of the story that are most important, then communicate the risk. It's deciphering between a run-of-the-mill shower and a tornadic storm. Those were the things I learned early on in my career. Being able to guide people along the weather story is the most important thing that we could do. It couldn't be that there was a knee-jerk reaction from one big storm and now we're looking at the next big storm. We develop the trust of the people in our community and we lead them forward day by day. And for me, it was never about talking about a 20% chance of rain. Our phones could do that. It was explaining why something would happen at a certain time. what the risk was. It also meant taking the initiative to speak about climate change when no one else would. You see, when I was studying meteorology in the 1990s, our climate was not a part of the curriculum. And then in the early 2000s, once I was back from Texas back into Illinois, when science was showing us the effect of burning fossil fuels, a politician at the time became a spokesperson of it. And I think while the intentions were good at the time, it was a huge mistake. You know, back then, we need to Bill Nye the science guy instead of the Vice President Al Gore. The same as we need meteorologists who are the authority on the subject in hometowns to be communicating that message today. I remember talking with management at WREX in Rockford when I wanted to start talking about and figuring out ways to cover how the climate was changing. So at the time, we were already doing a Going Green segment that was sponsored, and it ran somewhere in the D block. But I believe that the issue needed to come from the meteorologist. And I remember coming up with a plan, pitching it to the news director, to the general manager. I remember their skepticism when they looked back at me. But since we were locally owned by Quincy newspapers at the time, they allowed me to pitch it to our corporate news director, Dennis Kendall. And so I remember asking him, what if we were able to quantify the reaction that we get from me communicating this message? Because we can analyze the voicemails, the letters, the Nielsen ratings. At the time, it was a little bit before social media, so we couldn't talk about that. But we had the ability to determine the response from our community. And so we did. And then we analyzed all of those things, and the ratings did not go down at all. We were Rockford's news leader, and the ratings got stronger. And I believe that was because I had already earned the trust of the people in the community. People said, we couldn't believe anybody, but we believe Eric Sorensen on this. And that was because I had become the authority on weather, and then I became the authority on climate. But I also regularly looked into the camera lens, and I said, this is not political to me. If this challenges your politics, it becomes political to you. I'm the meteorologist, and I'm going to communicate to you the science. So I took the extra time to explain why we were seeing the stronger storms, the bigger floods, how this would impact farmers and even moms and dads and their ability to travel to take their kids to school. And I would talk about how the changing climate right in our area impacted our neighbors and our community. And I'll tell you, looking back on all of this, when I was growing up in Rockford, Illinois, the only thing that I wanted to be when I was a kid was to be the weatherman on Channel 13. And how lucky I was able to be there at 13 WREX for so many years in my hometown before I ended up moving to WQAD in Moline. And I'll share with you a story on how this all came to be. I was actually in the news studio at WQAD in Moline during Good Morning Quad Cities. That I think I was really called to serve in this capacity. So our top story that morning was Congresswoman Cheri Bustos announces that she's not running for another term in Congress. And so the Weather Center was here, the news anchors are over there, okay? And our news anchors, Jonathan Ketz and Angie Sharp, they both pointed at me. I don't know, maybe it was a joke, but once we rolled the sound bite, they said, you should do that. And I think I mouthed something like, you're crazy. I remember laughing a little bit, because the idea, it sounded kind of stupid to me, right? But then I'll be honest with you, I spent a lot of time soul searching. It was those sleepless nights, and I started thinking about what was the value of me being at WREX and WQAD? What was the value of the job and the career that I had? And then I started thinking about the fact that, I really earned the trust of the people by telling them the truth. And I'm not saying that I got the weather right every day or everything that we said on TV was even right. Instead, it was even admitting that we were wrong, but assuring the people that we strive to do what was right. And that's really, to me, what people in Congress should be doing today. I remember on the campaign, after I had made the decision to leave the only job that I ever wanted when I was a kid, to try something that so many people said that I couldn't do. And I was at the grocery store in Moline, and there was a senior citizen who came up to me, and she said, in this grandmotherly way, she said, "Eric, I miss how you used to tell us how the weather works." And I thanked her, and I appreciate you. And then she said, "Now you get to Congress, and you explain to us how Washington works." And then she walked away, and I remember gripping that shopping cart because I was in horror, because I'm like, I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to explain that to her. But now I can, because I'm here. Also, I'm one of the very few people here on Capitol Hill who gets to do this job without having any political baggage to get here. Hell, I don't even have a carry-on. But when I got here to Washington, and I really got into this job, and I understood what it was about, and I realized that everything I was doing in my previous life as a meteorologist was setting me up for success right here. And in Congress, I'm doing much the same thing. So my district today has someone in Congress who's never run for political office before. In fact, I think back to my high school years, I wouldn't have even won treasurer of my high school class. That's how nerdy I was studying science, pushing up my glasses all the time. But today, we have so much misinformation that's out there. And we have people in Congress today who are literally today trying to mislead the American people. So this is where it comes back to you. Because as reporters and journalists, we share the same role of being the communicators of what is true. We hold an incredible honor to safeguard our communities from harm. And we have an obligation to help lift them up. We have to tell their stories. We have to fight corruption. And we have to seek out the solutions to the problems that face our neighbors. And finding the individual success stories is what's so important. That's actually one of the best parts of my job. It's sitting down and getting to know the people that I serve in our district. And I'll share with you, just a couple of weeks ago, I met a constituent named Roger. We went to a Chicago hot dog place in downtown Bloomington. Roger lives just outside on a farm outside of the Bloomington Normal area. He's a Korean War vet. So I got to sit down and have lunch with a Korean War vet. But here's the fight that he was under. He's been fighting with the IRS for 3 years, trying to get a $22,000 refund that they owed to him. His accountant finally said, "Roger, I don't know what else to tell you other than to contact your congressman." And he told me, he goes, "I didn't even know who my congressman was." And so he looked it up, and he reached out, and he got in touch with our office. And then we worked with the IRS, and I think it was, just about a month or something like that? 30 days. We were able to get his check with interest. But what would Roger's story be if no one knew about it? So my communications team pitched the story to Shabnam Dadesh at WMBD in Peoria, and she was able to come and interview Roger. It's not that I should go on TV and tell Roger's story. He needed to tell the story. And by telling it, the community learns what a congressperson can do for them. This is not about being a politician. It's about showing our work. It's about bringing the tax dollars back to our district. It's for me finding the incentives to bring employers back to our hometowns and then developing the workforce that's going to make Illinois strong. So I implore you all tonight, I want you to find the elected leaders in your coverage area. Find the ones who are working to make a difference, and it has nothing to do with politics. Find them on both sides of the aisle. Find the independents too. Tell the stories of the people for the people who are benefiting from their hard work. Also, I want you to hold elected leaders to account. It was so important that journalists broke open the door of the corruption of Rita Crundwell in Dixon several years ago. It was why Governor George Ryan was held accountable for his corruption, and Rod Blagojevich and Dennis Hastert and more. So thank you all for committing yourself to the service of making our state a better place to live in. I would never want to live in a world without strong journalism. And sometimes I worry that we're heading in the wrong direction, but you have the ability to change that trajectory. So as I continue my work in Congress, I will look to you all to help lead the way for a sustainable future for generations to come. I'm so thankful to have spent 2 decades in local news. If there's anything that I can ever do to help you tell the neighbors and the stories of your neighbors, let me know. I'm so thankful that we had a chance to speak tonight on the impact that you have as journalists who go on to do different things in life. I think about all of the things that people have learned in small market TV that have gone on to do different things, including me here in Congress. So thank you so much for letting me be with you today and share my thoughts on how we can work together to strengthen journalism and build a bond between a skeptical public and the leaders they can trust. And finally, never forget what our neighbors expect from a leader. I remember 13 News, Rockford's news leader. Just had to do that one more time. Thank you all, and enjoy the Quad Cities tonight.